What's going on, Johnny Nation? Welcome to episode 116 of the Eye of the Storm podcast. My name is David Barov, and this episode is one that a lot of people enjoyed last year and asked us to do it again. And if there's one thing I've learned from professional wrestling, it's always listen to the audience. With that said, Frank Molfetta is here with me, and we are excited to welcome back our podcast brothers, Pat Kane, Cole Latshaw. You know them better as the dynamic duo behind the Red Storm Rapid Reaction podcast. Fellas, what's going on? It's been a minute since we spoke, but it's almost that time of year.
Thanks for having us back, Dave. Me and Cole always enjoy this. Always nice to chop it up with you and Frank. Of course, we keep up on our day-to-day stuff with the podcast and the Twitter banter, but getting here face-to-face to talk St. John Soup really sets the tone and makes me realize we're this close again to a St. John season. So glad to be back. Thanks for having us.
I can taste basketball already. Fordham's in big trouble in a couple of weeks. Can't wait. Excited to be back with you guys. Love this. Love getting to chop it up with the four of us. Thanks so much, Dave. Thanks so much, Frank.
Guys, happy to have you guys too. 2.5 weeks to the season, and it's a great time for all of us to get together here and give a little preview. Apologies for my voice. I was in Vegas this weekend. Still have not gotten my voice back.
This is arguably the most anticipated St. John's season since last year, but also probably you have to go back to year 1 or year 3 of Steve Lavin's tenure, where St. John's was, really highly thought of. That class that he brought in that unfortunately didn't meet the mark, but we're talking about preseason expectations and all that. That's kind of where you got to go back to. Well, Rick Pitino is getting ready for his second season in Queens, and obviously big transfers are here. We've touched on a lot of that, so I don't want to spend too much time on that. Between both of our podcasts, where the team is right now. But just Pat, Cole, I know you guys, you're going to be bringing out the mics real soon for the fans. Just general thoughts as we are about 2.5 weeks away from the season, how you're feeling now as opposed to, before when the transfer portal was on the way and getting going. St. John's and the team is at full health right now. We're a day after media day recording this, and Rick Pitino did say that he expects a full squad to play against Rutgers. He's not sure if everyone's going to get in, but he did say that everybody is healthy. So that is a good thing, especially because this summer we did hear about Jaden Glover having his wrist surgery. Brady Dunlap had an injury. RJ Luis obviously having the shin splint issues. And we just learned from Rick Pitino at Media Day that RJ Luis and Aaron Scott both recently had a concussion, but they're okay. So that's good to hear. But Pat, Cole, just some, where your head's at, where your hearts are at right now, 2.5 weeks before the start of another season.
Well, as St. John's fan, you got to be careful to use both your head and your heart when it comes to projecting St. John's seasons. We've all fallen guilty to trusting our heart a little bit further than our head there. And I think this season, it's the exception to that, Dave. I think it's time. I think it's time to get those expectations out there and to believe that St. John's ready to make some noise and to make a movement in the college basketball realm this season. I think what you said about being fully healthy is what's got me most excited. Obviously, there's still some time to go before the season really gets started, but just being a St. John's fan, a college basketball fan, I mean, we're not the only team that deals with it, but just not having a nagging injury or an eligibility question or a concern about someone being healthy or ready to play and having all your pieces just there to work at this time of the season is invaluable, especially in the time and place that college basketball is in now with new players and new pieces each year. So to have these guys all ready to play, to have a great test against Rutgers at their place before the season even gets underway, I think we're at a really good place. I think it's time to be excited. I think it's time to get those expectations up, and I can't wait for tomorrow and what's going to happen after that.
I think thinking with my heart is always my problem. I'm always preseason, 31-0, undefeated regular season. Here we come, number 1 team in the nation. You got to be excited. You got to check your pulse if you're not pumped up about this season. When most prognosticators had us as like the number 1 transfer portal class, you bring in guys like Kadari, like Davon Smith to add to the returners that we had. That's super exciting. Kind of trying to level set for myself when me and Pat are talking on our podcast. I kind of always come to 2 big keys for me as far as question marks with this roster, and that's where's the 3-point shooting going to come from. Obviously we have RJ with his reworked jumper that by all accounts looks great. Can Kadari and Rick get together in the lab and improve his three-point shooting? Can Davon Smith be a more consistent three-point shooter after averaging about 27% in his first 3 years and then showing that he can be like white hot like he was for Utah in their NIT run? Jaden Glover looks tremendous as a freshman. Sim Wilcher, who's going to step up and provide that three-point shooting? And then where are the bulk of our minutes at power forward going to come from? Can we rely on Ruben Prey as a true freshman? Are we going to go small a lot with Aaron Scott and RJ playing at the four? I think those are kind of like my two main question marks with this roster. But as I always say, when you have one of the greatest coaches in the history of game, I can't really question roster construction or anything because I think Rick Pitino probably can figure it out if anybody can figure it out.
Yeah, that's for sure. I want to touch on media day just because we're fresh off of it. I was in attendance. A few takeaways from it. There wasn't too much, but one thing that stood out to me that I think is an interesting talking point with you guys is during his introductory statement, Rick Pitino said that he thinks that Vince Iwuchukwu, the transfer from USC, has the most upside of anybody on the team. I was definitely taken aback by that statement a little bit. But when you start to think about it, I think there's some merit to it. Vince Iwuchukwu, coming out of high school, was a top 30 recruit in the country, was recruited by every big blue blood in the country. He's 7'1". He's legit 7'1". This guy dwarfs Zuby Ejiofor. So it just gives you an idea. He's got some size to him, and he can move. He had his cardiac issue with USC, which set everything back. But I spoke to him yesterday at media that he is 100%. He is kind of adamant that he's 100%. He's like, guys, if I wasn't, they wouldn't have cleared me to play. I'm ready to go. He's so excited to play with Zuby. These are guys that know each other from when they were younger. They played against each other in AAU ball. Vince is a mobile big man, an athletic big man that I don't think that we've had in quite a while. It's a very interesting type of big man. So to hear Rick say that he's got the most upside on the team, a team that features Jaden Glover, a team that features Ruben Prey, who's been in discussions for NBA potential. It is interesting. We got Simeon Wilcher. I mean, again, you take everything that Rick says with a little bit of a grain of salt because he's so off the cuff, but at the same time, Rick is such a master with the player development and scouting for talent. So I found that really interesting. I'm so curious to hear what you guys think about Vince kind of getting that high praise from Coach Pitino, Frank.
Yeah, so for me, I'm kind of not surprised by that. I think when you have a guy with that body, 7'1", as athletic as Vince is, the upside's obviously there, and obviously, he was a top recruit, right? That's upside's a top recruit that's now a sophomore, didn't really live up to his recruit number his first year. Whereas, you kind of expect a guy at Jaden Glover's level to come in and perform right away, and that's the same level, I guess, that Vince was at when he was coming out of high school. Davon Smith, Kadari Richmond, RJ, Aaron Scott, you know what those guys are giving you. We kind of expect a little bit of big jumps from Wilcher and Ejiofor also, but I wouldn't say that there's untapped potential there. I mean, you look at the per 40 numbers for those guys, and they're very good. They're going to get more minutes this year, and it's going to manifest itself in filling up the stat sheet a little more. So, I definitely see that. I understand that. I would say Prey probably the only other one that, you'd say, hey, this guy's needs some polish, but he's got a ton of upside with his frame and some shooting ability if he works on that with Rick. But yeah, I'm not particularly surprised that he would say Vince has the most upside.
Cole, I'm curious where your head's at. Vince Iwuchukwu in the red-white scrimmage last week had a really good showing also. Everything was inside, but he was 7 of 9 from the floor. I believe he had 16 points and was cleaning up the glass as well. Again, this is a guy that is going up against Zuby. Now, listen, I spoke to a source that has seen a lot of practice and said that Zuby is kicking his butt on the floor. But this is kind of one of those iron sharpens iron type things. And again, we are expecting a lot from Zuby, so I'm not really surprised. But Frank, I agree with a lot with what you just said there about Vince. Cole, where are you at with hearing that?
Super excited to see Vince. Super excited to hear you say that by all accounts in practice and stuff, he's really cleaning up the glass. I think at times, as much as we all love Joel, sometimes that was an area where we struggled a little bit was defensive rebounding. So I think especially when you add guys like Kadari, like Davon Smith as guards who really can excel on the glass, to hear that we have maybe a real big man that can really come in and hold down his own as a center and clean up the glass. To my point that I brought up about power forward, and Pat's going to laugh at me about this because I always bring it up. Uh, I I don't give a damn if it doesn't work in today's modern basketball, but I always salivate at the potential of a twin tower situation. We've been hearing Rick say that Zuby can shoot threes for the last 2 years. Yeah. So can Zuby shoot enough 3-pointers to maybe keep the defense, hit the occasional three and keep the defense on its toes and be able to play some minutes at a 4 and bring in Vince for them to play together and then absolutely dominate the glass? Nobody can get a rebound against us. Again, I'll leave the rotations up to Coach P, but that's something that has me salivating, even if we can see it for a couple minutes.
I think, Cole, I'm a small ball fanatic, so I'll let you have your moment there. I won't talk you down from that moment. If Zuby's improved enough where he can play minutes at the 4, that just means we're going to be a better basketball team. He's going to have to prove it to me first before I see it, but I wouldn't be absolutely shocked if it turns out to be the case. In terms of Vince, I was curious if Rick meant by his remark that he had the most room to grow or if he had the highest ceiling. Kind of on the same lines Frank was talking about. Definitely some guys who have proven much more and are at a higher level than Vince. But with that frame and that pedigree coming out of high school, if he's ever able to reach that full potential of a player, then we could really have something there. And it's up to Rick. If he says he sees it there, then it's up to him to get that unearthed. The one biggest question mark I got for Vince, and I think, if Zuby's capable to be your 20 to 25 minute guy and Vince is your backup center, I think you're in a good spot. Just the lack of shot blocking is weird to me. 1.8, I think, per 40 minutes is rather low. Considering he's a 7-foot guy, and that's per 40. Zuby was over 3. And it's for a guy with such length and such size, you just have to block more shots. I don't have to pretend like I know everything about USC's defense, where they're keeping guys out of the paint. Was he just not going for blocks? Was he deterring shots in a better way? That could all be the case. Just something to look at and see if he really does play as big as he is, or if he's more of a guy who lacks maybe the wingspan or the standing reach of most 7-1 guys.
The interesting thing too about Cole's idea with the Twin Towers thing is, separate and apart from that, you two guys give you very different looks. You have a real true small ball center in Zuby, who's athletic, who I think will be able to stretch the floor. That's something they're working on specifically with him this offseason. That and sort of turning and facing up so that he can play that 4 effectively if they wanted to move him out there. And then you come in with Vince, who's a big 7'1", athletic, mobile, the big man. And so you get those different looks, a strong, stout shooter in Zuby. And then you've got this lankier, taller, bigger presence in Vince.
Yeah, theoretically they do complement each other very well.
Yeah, but what's interesting is that at the end of last season, Rick said that his plan was to play Zuby at the 4, and now it seems like the plan is Zuby's locked in at the 5, but he's gonna be the guy that he told me. He's like, listen, I'm not gonna go hunting for the 3s, but if it's there and I'm open, I'm gonna let it fly. That's a quote from him to me yesterday. So, will they play Vince and Zuby together? I don't think so, but is there going to be a time where Zuby plays with Ruben? And is there a time where Aaron Scott is on the floor with Zuby and they sort of alternate who's playing center? Because from what I'm told, Aaron Scott has been the absolute best defender in camp all summer. He's bigger than you think he is and is listed. And he is someone that has wowed this staff all summer. The same source who told me about Zuby giving Vince all that work said there is not a single player in camp all summer that has been better than Aaron Scott. He's shooting over 40% from 3 at high volume, and they are gushing over Aaron Scott right now. Something else from Media Day yesterday, Zuby Ejiofor and Kadari Richmond named captains of both. Rick Pitino talked about both of them, said that Kadari was near unanimous. Zuby was the unanimous captain by the team vote. Actually, Sadiku Ayo got a few votes for captain as well. That was interesting, but a great piece from our buddy Kevin Connolly this morning after Media Day, where he spoke to Rick Pitino about Zuby. And Patino talked about that he spoke to Kansas coach Bill Self, who got to coach Zuby when he came out of high school. And Bill Self told Rick Pitino, quote, "You're getting an unbelievable young man, but he's extremely limited. He can't score past 12 feet. He's mechanical. He's not really a good passer, and he's always in foul trouble." And Rick Pitino just lauded about how much he has improved in year one. So that kind of piggybacks off of what I was talking about with his improvement. But again, like I said, me and Frank are super high on Zuby. I'm curious if are we just a little bit drinking too much of the Kool-Aid, or do you guys think that Zuby can be one of the most improved players in the Big East like we do?
I think he could definitely be a legitimate starting center, above average starting center. I think I'd stop. Maybe you guys will talk about those numbers. I saw you guys list on Twitter a few weeks ago your projections. I don't want to put words in your mouth, like 14-7 or something like that. You guys,
Yeah, something like that. 14-8. Yeah,
14-8,
That's
and
about right.
I think if he gets that on a random night, I won't be surprised in the least bit. Averaging it, I think, a little bit high. I'm trying to think of like him next year as a finished product if he could get to there, and I think that's possible. But I couldn't imagine him getting there now and then having a whole another year to get to a higher level than that. And if he does, God bless us and God bless him, and we got ourselves a national contender. I would go something like 9-6 would be my projection. But he's capable of getting 20-10 on a night if he gets the minutes and he gets rolling. I think the Big East is situated this year to fit his game well. You know, Cliggin's gone, and a couple of the best big men, Marquette, Providence, are gone. So there's not many huge 7-footers patrolling the paint. More so the old school 6'10", 6'9" big guys that Zuby can handle. If we got to bring out Vince, we got Vince. But I'm excited to see what Zuby's got. I hope he doesn't get too trigger happy. If he hits them, let him fly, like you said. But I think his defense, his physicality, and his presence in the paint is going to be what really carries this team.
Yeah, I think as long as like you said, Pat, don't be chucking them up nonstop, but as long as he can just keep defenses honest, I find that quote from Bill Self very interesting, saying he doesn't have range outside of 12 feet, and then Rick Pitino for 2 years has been saying that he can shoot the three ball. That doesn't exactly like align to me, but even going back to his time at Kansas, when you're watching the game, it's Zuby just jumps off the video at you. Like, he's constantly in motion, constantly setting screens without the ball. Like you look at his per 40 numbers, like they jump off the chart. I love Zuby, by all accounts, tremendous human being. So
great.
Thrilled to hear that the rest of the team thinks so too, and that they anoint him as captain. Also, like with Kadari being named captain as well, like we'd be lying if we didn't say that people had brought up not character issues, but concerns with his temperament and his ability to push it 100% and practice all the time. And now his first year wearing the red and the white, and he's immediately named captain. He obviously must be showing his teammates something in practice. He must be showing the coaches that he's willing to bring it and improve his game and step up to the next level. That doesn't really align with what we had heard of him as a person from his previous stops. So excited to hear that, whether he's matured as a person, whether those previous accounts are inaccurate. This, I just, again, can't be more excited for this season to start up.
You got to remember, a lot of those accounts came from salty Seton Hall fans after the fact. There was always rumblings of it in season, but a lot of the more damning and direct ones came from bitter Seton Hall fans. So take it with the whole helping of salt. For me, the case for Zuby putting up numbers like Dave and I said is in the per 40 stats again. I mean, he was 15 and 11 last year per 40. So just looking at that on like a 30-minute basis, you're looking at 8 and 12 or something like that before you factor in improvements. And stop maligning the man's 3-point shooting. He's a career 37.5 3-point shooter. He can shoot all the damn time. But no, I do
At the
like
end
that
of last
attitude.
season, he was shooting a few of them.
I do like that attitude. He didn't attempt a single three at Kansas. He's 3 of 8 last year. So he I don't want him to let him fly. He's not Steph Curry, but he is I think a capable 3-point shooter, and he's definitely going to drill those ones when they're there. And I'm also not surprised in the least that he was named captain. But I'll echo Cole's thoughts. I'm a little bit surprised on Kadari just because of the reputation there. But clearly he's made an impression on his teammates in a short time span, and that's what you like to see, and that's bodes well that his head is in the game and ready to do the work and put in the work, make the team successful.
Yeah, our other buddy Zach Braziller of the New York Post actually asked Rick about those, comments, and I guess the reputation that is preceding Kadari. And, Rick attributed a lot of it to his youth. Kadari himself said it. Yeah, it was a lot of youth. So Cole, like you said, maturing. And, who knows? Maybe there was some bitterness. Maybe there was a little bit of butting heads with Shaheen Holloway last year. We heard a lot of rumors. Don't know what's true, but, those are some things that are happily in the past. Frank, it's your time to shine because you got those per 40 numbers, but I got some early metrics talk. We need like a buzzer, some kind
Ooh.
of a something going on here we know that there's Frank every time we release an episode where we talk about metrics and everybody's like, "Oh my God, stop talking about this stuff." And it's like, "No, it's part of our game now. It's that we have to talk about it." But we have the absolute first basic stuff that's out right now. The Ken Palm preseason rankings came out. St. John's 19th in the country in his preseason rankings, and the AP poll came out just a few days ago. St. John's narrowly missing the top 25, getting 91 votes, which is good for 27th. They were just one vote shy of 26th place, which I believe was Illinois. So St. John's coming in at 27. I think that's very fair. I thought they would be kind of in that 22 to 28 range. Every kind of poll that you saw, everybody's preseason, they were kind of in that range. So I think it's fair. I think people have questions about this team meshing, but it's the highest that they have been in quite a while, and I think it's fair. I'm curious where you guys are at, Frank. 27th in the AP poll to start the year.
Think it's fair. I also think a lot of voters are going to want their ballots back after we go into Jersey Mike's Arena and put the whooping on Rutgers in a couple days or tomorrow as we're recording. But I think it's a reasonable spot for us just outside the top 25. I think that's pretty much in line with the Corvic projections of the Ken Pond projections and reality, right? We've been down this road with St. John's before, and we don't have that cachet, that brand of successful basketball yet. And so we're not going to get the benefit of the doubt from voters like that as we come into the season. We're going to have to get out there and prove it and win some games. And we've talked about it. We're going to have plenty of opportunities in the non-conference schedule to boost that ranking. And hopefully we see some of those opportunities, get that buzz building. But yeah, I'm fine with it. And it's a preseason poll. Polls are generally irrelevant to me anyway. I'm a more of a metrics guy, as we all know, but especially preseason polls, it's about as good as bracketology in August. Like it's completely meaningless.
Rick Pitino at Media Day straight up said these polls are basically BS, and he says that he basically said it was a waste of time, and anybody putting any stock
Rick.
into the poll, especially the preseason poll right now, is absolutely wasting their time. I'm curious if he would say the same thing if St. John's was ranked in the top 25, but I did find that funny. He was very adamant about the poll meaning absolutely nothing.
And I wonder to what extent that is just, him being mad about being 27th or him keeping his guys grounded saying he hasn't done anything yet.
You guys know that like hat that dogs wear, right? And it's got a string up top and it hangs out like a little hot dog in front of them. So they got to keep running to try to catch the hot dog. That's what the 27th is for us, right? That 25 is just slightly out of reach and it's just right there in front of us. So we got to be chasing down that number. So I think it's good motivation. It's good to be part of the discussion. But it doesn't upset me that we're not included in the top 25 preseason polls.
And you get to go chase down that team that sits at number 25 in
Yeah.
Rutgers when you play them in an exhibition game on Thursday.
That's right. Chase that hot dog. I'm going to now use that the rest of the year. I want to briefly touch on another story that has made its wave over the last week or so. We're not going to spend too much time on it. It's a hot button issue, and I caught enough flack on it on social media, but I know that not all of us agree here. But over the weekend, Rick Pitino did go to Kentucky and he was there to celebrate Mark Pope and their tip off event. He has never been shy about his love for Camelot and Kentucky. Obviously, won a national title there. And he has publicly said that it is his biggest regret of leaving Kentucky. And if Dick Vitale, I believe, told him that if he would have stayed at Kentucky, he would have been the all-time leader in wins as a college basketball coach. Uh, don't think that Dick Vitale's wrong there. But Rick did make some waves over the weekend as he was seen wearing a Kentucky zip up at their tip off event. Then the next day, he was at their practice, talked to the team, and was wearing a St. John's shirt, but later went to the Kentucky football game, was back wearing Kentucky gear and toured his old house. And listen, I get that there's a lot of nostalgia there, and he loves that place and all that. But personally, I thought it's a little weird that a sitting head coach of a Division One team, a team that potentially you could see in March Madness one day, you're wearing their colors. Now, I get it. He loves that place. He has an affinity for it. That is his darling and baby, and he did great things there. I have no issue of him going to support Mark Pope. He campaigned for him to get the job. He sent that very nice video when he got hired, and he is a god in Kentucky. Maybe not in Louisville right now, but in Kentucky. But I get it. I just thought it was a little off-putting, and I had a lot of fans from other teams reach out to me and was like, "Hey, if I was a St. John's fan, I'd be pretty ticked off." And listen, I'm not losing any sleep over it. I really don't care that much. It's over with. It's just the storyline that came out. I thought the sitting St. John's head coach wearing Kentucky's brand on his chest was a little off for me. I wasn't crazy about it. Pat Cole, I don't know. What do you guys think of it?
I think just there's not. Is there another sitting coach who has won a national championship at another team? I can think of Calipari. Other than him, I think Pitino is the only one at another team that they're coaching at now. And then you take into account his former player just got named head coach, and the fact that he didn't get fired. He has no bad blood. They love him there. The only issue I could really have with it is the fact that he was gone for a weekend when we're trying to get ready for the season. I could see you being pissed for him being away for a full weekend when
Yeah.
it's
He
time
did
to
say
get
he
going.
moved practice in order to fly to be at Kentucky's tip-off event.
Sure. And there's recruiting and there's prepping and all this other stuff. So I think you could have a legitimate gripe if he's not there gallivanting, for an extended vacation at a former place. But I don't have the issue with the whole Kentucky thing. It really doesn't bother me one bit. If it was UConn or Syracuse or a rival of ours, I would feel differently about it.
Providence,
Kentucky,
where he
yeah,
actually was.
sure. I would feel definitely about Providence as well. When we'll see if they have a Final Four reunion while he's here. If what might happen then. I don't think he'll be wearing a Providence uniform or a shirt, but that's my thoughts. I don't blame anyone for being upset. I don't think it should have been as much of a topic as it was, but that's St. John's being in the news circle, and that's fine by me.
Well, Pat, what you forget is that you brought up potential recruiting, but yet Rick has now said that we're not recruiting high school players and we're strictly a transfer program. So there is no recruiting to be done until the transfer portal opens, apparently. But I'm kind of with you, Dave. Like, I was a little taken back. Like, I don't want our coach rocking some other team's colors, but then him wearing the St. John shirt the next day at the Kentucky practice kind of softened the blow a little bit for me. So ultimately, like, whatever. Hopefully at the end of his career, when he's hanging up, he has all that nostalgia for St. John's because he's won multiple national championships here, and we're building trophies all over. We have trophies all over the place, and we're building statues for him. So that's the end goal. And then he'll never think about Kentucky or Providence or anywhere or Louisville ever again.
I mean, I'm with that. This could not be less relevant to me. He led the program. It's a unique situation where he's, a national title winner that's at a new program. And his not only that, but one of the guys on his national championship team is now the head coach after he, like you said, he petitioned for it, he pushed for it. Um, and he's our coach at the end of the day. He's coming home to us. Like it doesn't make a lick of difference what he does on his weekend. He didn't miss practices, he didn't miss anything. It's fine. I have no concerns about it whatsoever, and it doesn't bother me.
All right, let's get into this season coming up, the meat and potatoes. And Cole, you kind of just brought something up that has made rounds in regards to Rick Pitino saying that he is not recruiting anybody for the class of 2025. And while it's not necessarily a question mark for this season, I think it's a little, I want to say, I don't know. I think it's expecting a lot to think that all your players are going to come back and you're only going to have three potential players coming back in this NIL and transfer portal era. I understand that he's super high on where Jaden Glover is going to go and what he can do, especially after year one. I understand he's very high on Ruben Prey, left terrace it's hopeless. Another year with Sim, Brady, RJ, Zuby. I get it, but I think that it's a little. I don't know. It seems very odd to just completely not recruit a 2025 class that, by all accounts, is very strong, especially locally. So while that's not a question mark, I'd say for this season, obviously it's for next, but it's just about you have to hope that these guys this year take that next step up for sure and then stay because that's just not a guarantee anymore. We don't have contracts for NIL. We don't have assurances. And, what happens if Jaden Glover plays only 12 minutes a game, averages about 7 points per game, has some flashes, but doesn't get the minutes that he really wants? And, like AJ Store, he ends up leaving for another program. And then okay, we got to do a little bit more work in the portal. So you brought it up, so I just wanted to start there. But I'm opening up the floor to you guys. What are your biggest question marks for this season for St. John's?
Well, for me, I think it's the bench production once we get going and we get our a little bit discussion so far if it's going to be Simeon Wilcher, who'll be that starter that Rick's pointed to. I was considering him coming off the bench, but even if he's at that top six, I hear a lot of fan talk about the bench and the depth of St. John's this year, 1 through 10, and maybe even 11, 12 possible guys can help out. And I think that that's possible. I'm excited about the pieces we have on the bench, but when you really look at what we know of, it's a lot of potential. It's a lot of speculation in terms of guys producing at their highest level we can imagine. Our 6 through 10 right now is two sophomores who were highly recruited but didn't really produce at the level of a high impact freshman last year. The fan base is high in both of them, and so am I. It's two freshmen that are top 100 but not top 40, and Jaden Glover and Ruben Prey. And it's junior transfer in Vince, who has shown potential but has really not put it all the way together yet. At all those five guys' best output and what they could become if they get there, we're going to have a phenomenal bench. It's going to be hard to straighten it out, and guys will be really fighting for minutes. But there could be a case, and I could easily see it, where two or three of those guys don't quite make the jump we expect, and then we're really relying on a 7 or 8 man rotation, and that will be the difference between whether we're a team fighting for an NCAA tournament team or a team fighting for a top 5 seed in the NCAA tournament. So to me, it's to see how that bench really shapes up, and maybe that's part of the reason why Coach wants to bring Simeon as a starter, so he can have maybe Aaron or maybe Davon come off the bench to help ignite that second unit and to bolster a little bit. So there are several concerns. Shooting's been mentioned, but to me, what I'm most interested in seeing is how that bench shakes out, and to see how high of a ceiling it could have.
Yeah, what kind of depth does St. John's really have? Like you said, a lot of fan talk, and right now everybody's talking about the starters. Rick Pitino was very adamant. Rick Pitino was very adamant at Media Day that Simeon Wilcher is a starter right now. Davon Smith, because of the shoulder injury that just got cleared up again, healthy. I would I would be surprised if Davon doesn't start, but I could also see the case for Davon as that sixth man spark with his speed coming off the bench would be a different dynamic. But I think the depth question is legitimate. I think after your first seven, I think you can start asking some questions. Cole, some of your big question marks for this season, or what Pat said about the depth?
Yeah, I think I had mentioned it earlier, but I think 3-point shooting for me is really the big one. Who's going to be where is that going to come from? We had mentioned RJ, his reworked shot. I know we just recently had the red white scrimmage. I think the team shot what, like 15 for 44 from three there. I know there were a few outliers, like Lefty was throwing it up and was only like 2 for 7.
Yeah, Aaron Scott was 1 of 8.
Yeah, kind of dragging it down. And then Jaden Glover, by all accounts, looked tremendous, really filled it up. Can he be someone that's relied on even as a freshman to come off the bench and shoot some threes and really help stretch the defense? I think that's just like so vitally important in this day and age of basketball, where we have so many guys that have for their career, Kadari, Adavon Smith, not really been reliable three-point shooters. Does getting to work in one-on-one development sessions with Rick Pitino help improve and make them more consistent? I would probably lean to yes. Then can they like be more relied upon? Can that really change the type of team we are and our ability to shoot threes as a team? Also, like just really interested to see, as I had mentioned too, with the power forward minutes, what type of roster do we run out against Rutgers tomorrow? Like, are we playing a lot more small? Or I haven't really seen a lot of tape on Aaron Scott. By all accounts, he's almost as tall as Zuby Ejiofor. So, do we want to call him playing four as being small, or is he really actually like almost a small ball five, like with
Yeah.
the ability to fill in a little bit at center? Um, so it's super interested to see sort of rotations, whether we're going small, whether we're playing big, uh, who's getting the lion's share of the minutes at the four. Obviously, we would have loved a Norchad Omier or a Dylan Mitchell or one of those guys that we were sort of in there at the 11th hour to commit. But having Ruben Prey with Rick raving about his high ceiling, I think for the long term, that might be a tremendous addition and really solidify the four for future years. How much can he be relied on as a freshman? Not really sure, but really excited to see this Rutgers exhibition and see what type of lineups Rick's rolling out.
So, you guys kind of hit on two things that I'm concerned about. So I'm just going to give kind of a one person thing, not to single a player out, but for me, I think a big key is going to be Brady Dunlap taking a jump, right? I think obviously I'm very bullish on Zuby's ability to continue contributing at a high level with more minutes. I feel the same way about Simeon Wilcher. His per 40 numbers are very good. He was a very good shooter. I think he's going to fit right in and fill that starter role 25, 30 minutes a game and really fill up the stat sheet. But from that perspective and filling in, the front court is where that depth is really troublesome and where the question marks really lie as far as after, Scott and Ejiofor, who's next? Maker's a freshman. Ruben Prey is a raw freshman, but come out of Europe, so maybe a little more along than Maker. I would Chuck Wu underwhelmed in 2 years at USC, but had a lot of issues. Can Rick get that untapped potential out of him? And then you've got Brady Dunlap. Has he bulked up enough to not get bullied around? Can he be a small ball four when we need him? Can he hit shots at a consistent level like we saw him do at times last year, some games last year? Can he be more consistent with that 3-point shot? And I think if you get the Brady Dunlap we saw during that hot stretch he had last year, that is going to be such a huge key for this team, and it's going to make all the difference in the world for them from the depth perspective and also from that front court plus the swing man position.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. When we say that, what are your biggest question marks for the season? I think inherently we think negatively, but to me, I'm so curious about Simeon Wilcher, Kadari Richmond, Davon Smith playing together. How is it going to work? Now, I don't say that and I mean it like it's not going to work, but how does it work? These guys are three very different type of guards, but are, at least for Davon and Kadari, are so used to being on the ball. And now you guys are going to get pressure taken off of you as to you don't have to create as much. But what do these guys do in a situation where they don't have to necessarily create everything anymore? Now they get to rely on everybody else, and they do get to free themselves up, and it could just be a very different style of offense than what St. John's fans are used to. But I'm curious for these guys who have been so used to playing kind of one way as a lead guard, how they look and how they adapt to it, because Simeon Wilcher, by all accounts, is going to be looking for shots. Yesterday at practice that we got to see, St. John's was running a lot of plays to get Sim open for three. Kadari Richmond is the guy that I think will be leading the break a lot. But then on, the teams talk about pace and running really fast, and on fast breaks, if Kadari's coming down with a head of steam, does Kadari just take it to the hole himself at 6'6"? Who's going to stop him? Or does he get to kick it out? It's just before, when he's at Seton Hall, he had to do so much himself, and that's why he was so impactful. But now, if he doesn't have to, it's just that mindset as a guard, especially as a point guard. Like, how do you kind of just switch your focus? Pat, you're a coach. I mean, how do you see three guards like this? Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we got a coach on the podcast. We got multiple coaches on this podcast. Bob Walsh isn't the only one. We got Pat Kane. What's up? But in all seriousness, Pat, I mean, you see the development of kids, obviously younger than what we have at St. John's, but when it comes to having this many guys play together who are normally used to playing the same position, guys who are used to having the ball in their hands, how do you think it's going to shake out? And, what do you say to guys, in order to make sure that they are confident, especially when they don't have the ball in their hands all the time?
Well, Dave, I think to me, the only thing wrong with three guards is that it's not four guards. I want as many guards out there as possible. Obviously, it's nice when some of those guards have size, like Kadari does. He unlocks so many different lineup combinations with his ability to guard up. I mean, he can guard your power forward as well as I think RJ or Aaron Scott will be able to. And then if you're able to put him at that four defensively, you can load up on perimeter players. You can put lineups like Glover, Wilcher, and Smith out there and get really creative. To answer your question about having guys share the basketball, that comes down a lot to just the culture and the way your team's going to play. And to our benefit, both those guys, Smith and Kadari, are in the upper echelon of defensive rebounders. So there's not going to be a question about, hey, give me the ball. They're going to get it. They're going to get it themselves off the backboard and get it and go. So that will alleviate some of that question about who's bringing the ball up. Who's ever got it is bringing the ball up. I think Smith has also had the benefit of playing a lot of different roles at Georgia Tech and then at Utah. He wasn't always a primary ball handler. He was kind of just a fit-in guy. He did a little bit of everything. Passed the ball, brought the ball up, played defense, rebounded. And then he really exploded as a facilitator last year, really kind of out of nowhere. And I think Kadari will benefit that. And I think some fans or pundits might point to the discussion we had a couple years ago when we had Posh and we had Curbelo in our backcourt, and they said, can two guys who can't shoot the basketball coexist? I think there's a huge difference between two guys who can't shoot and two guys who can't score. And these two guys are proven high major scorers. Kadari averaged 17 points a game in Big East play last year. Smith averaged 14 points a game in Pac-12 play last year. So there's a difference between guys who can't shoot. And, Smith shot 40%. I don't want to write him off as a guy who can't shoot, but, they're not volume shooters. They're bucket getters still. They're going to get in the paint. They're going to live there, and they're either going to get a bucket for themselves or find their teammates for shots. And I think as long as they're winning, that's all going to work out. That's the way a coach would want it to go. Let the winning even out all the personalities. But I'm confident. Like I said, I think where we're good at is where we're most proven at, and that's the backcourt. And I'm willing to let the cards go out as they will and see where they land.
Johnny Nation, those are just some of the questions that we have for St. John's coming into this season. I'm curious what you guys think. Make sure respond to the comments on social media, on Facebook and on Twitter. Please let us know. I mean, definitely would love to hear what you guys think as well. We're going to go down the line here, and I think we did this last year when we were all together. We had some superlatives, so I got a bunch of these that we're going to rattle off. We'll try to do it quickly. So I'm going to start with you, Frank. Who are you most looking forward to watching this year? Which one player? Who do you think has the biggest leap this year, and who has the biggest impact?
I would say for most excited and biggest impact, I'm going to go with the same guy. I think it's Timmy and Wilcher. I think of that three-headed monster in the backcourt. Sim has the most upside of those three. He's the shooter of those three. And so that's going to be key for our backcourt to succeed with those three guys sharing the ball is for him to be able to hit those shots when he needs to. So, I'm super excited for him. And, as far as most improved this year, I think it's going to probably be Zuby in a lot of people's mind. I think a lot of people are going to be surprised by how much he's jumped. But like I said, I think his per 40 numbers, I think he's already there. So I would probably say maybe Brady Dunlap. I do think he does take that leap I was just talking about, and he is able to be that big contributor and be a key 3-point shooter for us on the wings to catch those kick out passes from Davon and Kadari.
That's where I thought you were going to go. I'm happy you went there. Cole, what do you think? Who is you most looking forward to seeing this year? Who do you think has the biggest leap from one year to now? And who do you think has the most impact on the court and on the team?
So most excited, I gotta go Davon Smith. Have you ever seen any of those highlights of those jams at Georgia Tech and Utah? Golly, woo, that'll get us up out of our seats. Biggest impact, I was super intrigued by that comment from Rick at Media Day about expecting those three guys to be guaranteed starters in Zuby, Kadari, and Simeon Wilcher. So I'm gonna go Simeon Wilcher. I think we all know what we're gonna get out of Kadari. Simeon is that guy where it's like if he plays to the level we all think he can play at, that has such a tremendous impact of the type of team that we're going to be and that we want to be. And then most improved, I love Frank's pick of Brady. I wanted to go there. Kudos to the kid who looks like he put on some LBs too. Like proud of him
Yes.
that he
22
recognized that
pounds.
that. Love it.
22 pounds. He actually
Love
then
it.
shed some down. He told me yesterday he's down to about, I think it was 200 pounds. He finished playing last year. He said at like 178. He put on 22 pounds this year, was walking around then later at about like 205 or 208, something like that. And now he's back down to 200. And he told me in the summer he was trying to learn how to play with the weight now. And so he's really got that down. He's not winded as much anymore. And so that was good to hear from him.
Love it. Good kid. So I'll go just to be contrarian, like I'll go with Zuby. I think we can all hopefully expect a huge step from him, and we're going to need it if he's going to hold down the center spot. So couldn't be happier. Love that he was named captain. Super pumped.
Pat, who are you most looking forward to? Who has the biggest leap from one year to the next, and who has the most impact on the team?
Okay, who I'm most looking forward to is Kaderi. I've been watching his highlights 6 years ago, hoping he was going to choose St. John's, and then when he was a freshman transfer, and I was there again, stalking him, hoping he would choose St. John's, and we finally got him, and now I'm excited to see what he can do in his one lone season in Queens. And he would be my pick for the biggest impact. I think he's going to lead us in scoring, and I think he's going to lead us in rebounding. That's maybe my hot take. Although, I mean, the guy averaged 7 rebounds a game last year, so it's not out of the realm by any means. Biggest improvement, I'll go with Simeon. I think that would also mean great things for us, Frank. I mean, you just, I think you said you thought he had the highest ceiling of those three guys. If he were to reach that point where he's better than Smith and Kaderi, just like I said with Zuby, I mean, that would lead to us being a top 10 team in the country. And I don't think you're, crazy for saying that. He's got pedigree, he's got talent, he's got to put it together. He's got size and he's got the shooting ability. If it comes together for him in combination with those two guys on the back court and the pieces we know about in the front court, it'll be one heck of a season. And fingers crossed it happens.
Player I'm most looking forward to this year is simply me buying into what I've heard this summer, and that's Aaron Scott. From like I mentioned, everything that I'm hearing, the way that he impacts the ball, and this guy is the true definition of a Swiss Army knife. I'm so intrigued at what a player like this can do on the floor for us. The biggest leap, kind of hard not to go with Zuby because of where I project him to be this year. I'm just really really bullish. And as far as who has the biggest impact, it's hard not to pick Kadari, man. We've seen this guy's tortured St. John's for years now. He scored 15 points, 8 rebounds, 9 assists in his sleep against us. So now he's gonna do it for us. So very excited for that. So those are our picks. Let's go to other superlatives. try not to be redundant here. So I've got a few. So all right, Pat, this is one that you suggested. Who is going to be leading this team in double doubles?
I think it's going to be Kadari. I think it's an interesting question because you got a lot of possibilities. I mean, Smith had 5 triple doubles. I'm not sure if he had any other just solo double doubles, but if you have the capability of getting 5 triple doubles, you obviously have the capability of getting a handful of double doubles.
At 6 feet?
Zuby,
No.
yeah, at 6 feet. Like Cole mentioned with his athleticism earlier, it's really show stopping and a knack and a you know that type of nose for the basketball, something I love. Cole will attest all the times it would get on freaking AJ Store for not going after rebounds. It's you can't teach it, and the guys either have it or they don't. We've got 2 guards in Kadari and Smith who got it in spades. Where were we? What was the question, Dave? I'm sorry. I was thinking so
Who's
much
going to
about AJ
lead?
Store now.
AJ Store, who
Oh
transferred
yeah,
to
so I think
Kansas this year.
Kadari will
Double
lead in
doubles.
double doubles. I think Kadari will lead in double doubles, but I think Zuby, Davon, and perhaps Vince or RJ could have a shot as well to rack up a few.
Man, you could have really given me a clip to use there and go with a hot take of Davon Smith leading the team in double doubles all year.
Hey, take it, Dave.
Frank, what do you got? Who's leading this team in double doubles?
I mean, I think it should be obvious to everybody at this point. I'm going to say Zuby Ejiofor. I mean, I'm just so high on him, and I think he's going to clean that class, and I think he's going to pour it in the bucket. So I'm definitely going with Zuby there.
Cole.
I'll give you the hot take, Dave. 6 foot guard who's got the dog in him, Davon Smith, leading the team in double doubles. Book it.
I would not be surprised if it's actually Kadari. The way that this guy rebounds the ball and, like Pat said, knows for the ball, and he's so big and he's so powerful, and who's going to stop him from in the paint? I think that's going to be if it's not going to be a big man, I think it could very well be Qatari, but now I'm just rooting for it to be Davon Smith. So let's go there.
I am too. I'm rooting for it
By
too.
the way, not to derail the superlatives here, but I do think it underscores an important point is, this team was so bad at defensive rebounding last year. We were 36th percentile in the country. And the fact that there's this many guys that we can have in the discussion that we wouldn't be surprised if they led the team in double doubles underscores how much we're going to be improved in that aspect of the game. And I think that's going to be a huge key for us this year.
It's a really, really good point. Really good point. Let's go to some of the obvious ones, the people that want to hear who is leading this team in points, rebounds, and assists. Rebounds, I think we kind of covered there. So let's go with points and assists. Cole, start us off.
So points, I'll go Kadari. Rebounds, I'll go Kadari. And then assists, I think I'll go Simeon Wilcher. I expect him to have the ball in his hands a lot and creating for others. He's already shown a knack for that. I could see Sim leading the team in assists. And again, to what I had brought up previously, with him having the biggest impact on the team, I think if Sim plays to that type of level, if Sim plays to a level where he can lead us in assists, I think that speaks volumes to how good of a team we're going to be and how close we're going to get to these expectations that we have for this guys.
Pat, Triple Crown, points, rebounds, assists. Who is leading each category?
I hate to go chalk. I'm going Kadari points, Kadari rebounds, and Smith assists. I think that 7 assists is it's not easy to do. You got to have some serious knack for finding guys for open shots to average 7 assists. And I think if we're not being too biased, I think he's got maybe more options to rack him up this year. So I'm going Smith, even if it's a little down from that 7. I think will be the highest number on the team.
I think I agree with you on Smith. I thought I was teeing you up there for the actual Triple Crown, and you were going to go Kadari on points, rebounds, and assists. And if that's the case, if Kadari somehow does lead this team in points, rebounds, and assists, we're talking first team All Big East. We're talking possibly player of the year in the All American for sure. I think right now Cam Jones is probably the leader in the clubhouse to be Big East Player of the Year. I believe he'll probably get preseason Player of the Year.
I think Calc's my guess for
Kalkbrenner. Okay, yeah, it's going to be him, Kalkbrenner, maybe a little bit of talk of Caravan, but if at the end of the year, if we're looking at a 17, 8, and 7 line from Kadari, I mean, good luck. Frank, who you got? Points, rebounds, assists.
I mean, I think assists is the obvious one. I think Smith's really going to play the one role predominantly out of those 3, but I do think they're all going to have the ball in their hands a ton. They're all going to average 3, 4, 5 maybe 7 assists per game. So that's that's my assists. Rebounds, obviously Zuby. That's where I'm at. I think he's going to be a beast inside in all regards. Points, I'm going to say Sim. I think he is just going to be really good and be able to feed off of Smith and Kadari. And as good as Kadari is at putting points on the board, I think what you're going to see, at least early in the year, is that a lot of teams are going to collapse that lane on us, force Kadari and Smith to kind of kick the ball out and try to beat us, try to make us shoot the ball and beat us that way. And I think that's going to leave a lot of opportunities for Sim on top of his driving and all the other abilities he brings to the table. So for me, I'm going Simeon Wilcher points.
One more big question about St. John's this year before we talk a little bit about the Big East and close this out. I'm curious from you three gentlemen, what do you want to see from St. John's as a team early before they get to the Bahamas so that you're feeling confident when you see Dave and Frank in the Bahamas, cheering on these Johnnies in, getting ready to play Baylor, getting ready to play either Tennessee or Virginia, and then getting ready to play Georgia. What do you want to see in those first handful of games from this squad that'll make you feeling good that they're going to possibly win, 2 games in Bahamas, maybe knock off a Baylor. That's asking a lot. I know that. But what do we want to see to build that confidence, Pat?
I'd like to see us develop a set starting lineup. I know that's not Coach Pitino's style, and I know he even alluded to that in the press conference this week that there might be the most lineup changes we'll see this year from any of his teams. And one or two we'll live with, but I'd like to see at least 3 or 4 guys who are solidly in that everyday game in and game out by the time we get down to the Bahamas. I think on the court, what I really want to see is the shots we're getting in the half court. Not necessarily if we're making them to start the season. I think, we'll have games where we're hot, we'll have games where we're cold, but it's more about the looks we're getting. And if we're able to get decent to high quality half court shots, that in conjunction with our press defense and our ability to get out and run, I think will be more than fine. But we'll have to see first if we're able to get those looks.
Frank, what do you want to see out of this squad before you get to see them up close and personal in the Bahamas?
I'm going to say defense. Tenacious, in the lane, swatting everything, defense. And I think we're going to see that this year. This team has a lot of talented defenders on it. The defense last year was somewhat mediocre. And I think that's sort of the biggest area for improvement with the squad. And certainly the guys that Rick has brought in are going to help us there. And on the other end of the ball, it's that 3-point shooting. I want to see if Simeon and Dunlap and Scott and Zuby to a certain extent can carry that load. And if, Smith and Kadari can contribute as quality 3-point shooters early on. So those would be the 2 things that I'll be looking for mostly.
Cool.
Let me first say what I want to see in the Bahamas are images of drunk Dave and Frank floating shirtless, sunburnt in the pool in the Bahamas. That's what I want to see from the Bahamas. But before we get there,
listen, if we're putting a line on me getting sunburnt in the Bahamas, that is -1,000,000. I get sunburnt so easily, so chances are high.
The line of me getting drunk in the Bahamas is even
Similar.
higher. So.
But prior to getting there, I want to see us kick the crap out of Fordham, kick the crap out of Quinnipiac, kick the crap out of Wagner, and kick the crap out of New Mexico. I think that New Mexico game at MSG, the Patino Bowl, will be a real litmus test, and we'll really be able to judge how we're going to perform in the Bahamas based on how they perform against New Mexico at the Garden.
I am hoping that we see a little bit of identity in regards to the balance on offense. Frank, you touched on defense, and yeah, I by all accounts, this is going to be a much better defensive team, far more athletic. I think they're quicker. They fit the mold of a Rick Pitino team a lot better. But I want to see the offense really gel. I want to see, that they're playing with a purpose in the half court. And again, I go back to what I said about those 3 guards. So much of this season, I think, is relying on those 3 guys, be it together, be it individually. So I think that they are going to be very vital early on, because if we're going to try to beat Baylor, if we're going to try and beat Tennessee, if we're going to try and beat Georgia or Virginia, these are four really, really good teams, teams that are likely going to be in the NCAA conversation. It's going to take really good guard play, Pat. You talk about small ball, you know that you win in college basketball with elite guard play. And I think for the first time in a long time, you can say that St. John's is going to be in that conversation. Well, I don't want it to take until December for us to see that. I want to see that right away. And I think it's going to be very important for the Johnnies, especially if we want to build that confidence going into the Bahamas. Guys, I want to wrap it up with some Big East Conference talk. I just put out my preseason rankings. Not that anybody cares, but UConn comes in at one because, well, when you win back-to-back titles, you get the benefit of that. Creighton comes in at two for me. St. John's, that's right. St. John's coming in at three. Waffled about putting them at 4 or 5, but, sure, call me a homer, call me biased. I got expectations. How about our Johnnies finishing top three in the conference with 14 conference wins? Then I got Xavier. Then I got Marquette. And there's a lot of Marquette fans that were in my mentions all night after I posted that. They were very unhappy with me. Oh, you guys always doubt Shaka, and all he does is win. And yeah, listen, I know, I get it. You're right. But Marquette to me, you just can't not replace Tyler Kolek and also Iguodaro. You just can't expect such a quantum leap from your guys that were playing on your bench last year. It is too gargantuan of an ask. I got Providence after that. That is one that I would not be surprised if they do much better than 6, but it's this Providence team has so many new faces and just a lot of question marks to me. Villanova, Seton Hall, Georgetown, Butler, DePaul rounded out for me. But I know you guys wanted to talk a little bit about the conference. I know some of you guys have some big question marks. Frank, I think you have something really interesting on Xavier, a team that a lot of people are very high on. I believe we heard our good buddy John Fanta recently say that he's got Xavier as an Elite Eight team. And that's a team that just had a really big injury that they from for what their big man transfer. So, Frank, I'm curious, where's your thought at on the Big East, and what do you got to say about the Xavier Musketeers?
I don't get the Xavier hype. I can't wrap my head around it because when I look at that roster, I see Davian McKnight and a whole bunch of question marks. And I get Zach Freemantle is a talented player, but he got one dud year when he was healthy. He hasn't played basketball in like 18 months competitively. So to act like he's just going to come back and be a dominant Zach Freemantle, I think is a little bit too rosy of a picture for me. And then, like Ryan Conwell, yeah, nice piece for a high major program. Great piece at the mid major level, as we saw. I'm not sure he's going to be able to do it consistently. Dante Maddox, another guy taking a big step up in class, coming from the MAC. He was highly regarded and sought after in the portal, but again, these are always question marks when you see these guys make leaps from conferences like the MAC. So that's another one for me that I'm just looking at that as a question mark for them. Jerome Hunter, pretty good player. We've seen him for a couple of years, but again, he's a piece. He's not the guy. And I don't think there really is a second banana here after Davian McKnight that can really carry that load. So to me, I don't think they're going to be. I think they're a tournament team probably still, but I think they're closer on the spectrum to like a last year's Seton Hall team where you had, Kadari and some complementary pieces, and here you have Davian McKnight and some complementary pieces. But a team with this elite top end talent that can, compete and make an Elite Eight like John Fonta believes they will. So that's my take on Xavier, and I've been pretty strong about it, and I definitely have had some Xavier fans in my mentions when I've tweeted about it.
Cole, what do you got about the Big East and this conference this upcoming season?
One of my big questions, and I love making fun of our brothers from New Jersey, is Seton Hall, and I love making fun of them for being a poverty program and having no NIL war chest. How long can Shaheen Holloway continue to overperform with a roster that's really not deserved of really performing super well in the Big East? And at what point does he get fed up with his alma mater for not providing him with the necessary funds to really feel the competitive roster that he deserves, as in my opinion, one of the best coaches in the nation? I mean, you lose obviously Kadari Richmond to their bigger brothers up north, wearing the red and the white, and they lose Dre Davis to Ole Miss. You replace that with what? I don't know, Garway Dual, who I loved coming out of high school, kind of had some one and done whispers, but then really underperformed in his 1 year at Providence. Scotty Middleton is a 3-point specialist at Ohio State. I think there's a Yassine Toomey who put up like 10 and 6 at Evansville, is apparently getting some high raves from Shaheen in practices so far, but I don't really envision that being better, even if Shaheen drags this roster up with him. I don't see that being better than what, a max 6, probably more like an 8 or 9 finish in the Big East. Best case scenario, you're kind of on that NCAA bubble or maybe in the NIT again. One of the things I found like super interesting from the offseason was Jeff Goodman in the field of 68 kind of throwing Shaheen in there as a last second candidate at Louisville. And I don't know how serious those conversations are.
I think
whether
he actually interviewed. They flew him out there for an
he
interview.
actually interviewed.
Mm-hmm.
Insane. Yeah. And I like Pat Kelsey. I think he was a good hire, but if Shaheen Holloway was a realistic candidate and the dollars weren't that different, I mean, that's a real needle mover of a hire for Louisville. How long can Shaheen continue to sit here at Seton Hall, not be provided the funds, and not maybe lose a little bit of that brilliant star that he is and lose some of that shine and not have some of these Louisville sort of a blue blood-esque on the verge of being a blue blood level team where he could go have an unlimited NIL fund to really put together the type of roster he deserves. And then, as I mentioned, in my opinion, he's one of the best coaches in the nation. He deserves that level of job, especially if Seton Hall isn't going to give him the type of money. So that's my question. Where can they finish? What's their ceiling with everything they've lost, despite how amazing of a coach Shaheen is?
I think, the thing that I love about this Seton Hall team and this whole Big East season, really, though, is that there's just such a juxtaposition here between this Seton Hall team that lacks talent, but has an elite coach that we've seen elevate talent before, versus, let's say, Villanova, who I think those two teams are going to be pretty close in the standings all season. And you've got a lot of talent on that Villanova roster, just like they had a pretty good amount of talent last year. The question mark is the coach. Can he get that talent to perform at the level that he needs it to succeed? I mean, if you gave Shaheen Holloway Villanova's roster, you're talking about a top 5 team in the Big East easily, maybe even higher than that. So, for me, I think that's a nice juxtaposition. I think you see the same thing with Marquette on that same scale as Seton Hall, where Shaka's a great coach. He can elevate talent, but do they have enough talent this year, to stay at the level they've been at? Obviously, I think they have enough talent to make the tournament again. Do they have that talent to stay in that top 3 conversation in the Big East with UConn or Creighton, or does a team like us or somebody else break through and get into that top 3?
My thoughts on the standings. First off, Dave, credit to you for putting that out there for everybody to rip apart. It's not easy throwing out those predictions on Twitter and just letting them go at it like sharks in the water. But credit to you. The two biggest differences I had, and Frank, I obviously appreciate your opinion. I'm zigging on what your take on Xavier so far. Here's my thinking. Fremantle and Hunter, they got to come back off injury. Obviously, there's some skepticism there. Understand that. McKnight, 12, 5, 40% from 3. A senior in the backcourt, that's a great place to start. Those 3 transfer guards all average over 15 points, all made over 2 threes a game. A 4th guard started 27 games for Boise State. They bring in Hewley from Oklahoma. He averaged 9 and 5 in 16 minutes a game in the Big 12. Cameron Fletcher averaged 11 and 8 in the ACC 2 years ago. And they bring back 2 sophomores who were top 100 guys who got 10 or so minutes a game last year. Not too unlike guys like, Simeon, Wiltshire, and Brady Dunlap that we're very excited about. I think that Sean Miller's shown the tendency to really get a lot out of these mid-major guards to pop up and play really well, like we saw with Stule Boom and Olivier. What was the guy's name last year?
Quincy Olivari.
Quincy Olivari. There you go. Thank you, Dave. So I'm high on him being able to put that roster together, but they did just get hit with that injury bug yesterday. I won't be able to pronounce his name. Dave, you're great at that stuff. But the young man from South Beach who averaged a double-double the last 2 years is out for the season. So that'll be a nice get for them to come back next year. But I think you got to help them some this year, especially with those injury concerns. I had them finishing first before that injury. I'm going to stick to it. They're my pick to win the Big East.
Wow.
I reserve to change that up until the start of the season if
Nope.
any more
Nope.
injuries were to take place.
Nope. That's locked
Nah,
in.
you're locked in.
And then
I'm gonna
I'm
ridicule
a
you
little
if
bit
they're not
higher.
first now.
Butler, I forget what you had him name, maybe eighth or ninth. I think I'd put them ahead of the Hall, ahead of Nova,
I have
and I'm
Butler at
right
10.
there with Providence. Oh, then I definitely have them higher. I have them in that 6 or 7 spot. I think Brooks and Telfort, the package on the wing, is going to go a long way. Two big, strong, experienced guys. You can slide them down to the 2-3. You can slide them up to the 3-4. And then old friend Kobe King, I'm really high on. I think he's going to come back to the Big East and have a really solid season playing, point combo guard for Butler. So I'd have them definitely above the 10 spot, somewhere between that 7, 8, 9.
I love Kobe King. Welcome back to the Big East, Kobe King. I will wrap this up with, you know, Providence has really high hopes, and there is not a fan base that is louder than Providence and Frank Molfetta's Friars. Let's just the reason why, and I listen, everybody's confident about their team right now, and that's what college basketball is about, and I get it. But just like Marquette didn't replace Tyler Kolek and Oso Ighodaro, Providence lost Devin Carter and lost Josh Oduro, two guys that did everything for that team last year. Devin Carter is nursing an injury, but he's was a top 15 pick in the NBA. Josh Oduro is also now in the NBA. They also lost Ticket Gaines, by the way, who was another guy who was really important for them. Now, Bryce Hopkins is back, but he's coming off of an injury. Cole, you mentioned Garway Doll. He's gone to went to Seton Hall. Rafael Castro was somebody that was a big who hit some threes. He's gone also. So you got Bryce Hopkins 10 months off of an ACL injury and a ton of new faces who you are just expecting. Well, they're going to translate. And listen, if there's somebody that can tell you that doesn't work out the way you think it does on paper, it's St. John's. We've been there before. Wesley Cardette, I think, is probably going to be their best player next to Hopkins if he's healthy. But look where he's coming from. You're expecting a lot from him. Jabari Abdul Rahim, probably also another guy who we're expecting a lot from him next to Hopkins. But, you know, you're it doesn't work that way on paper. Christ Doku, the UMass transfer. I had a friend who watched a ton of UMass basketball. I know he's going to listen to this because he's a St. John's fan. So I'm sorry you had to do that. But this guy had weight issues all the time. He had trouble staying on the court. He's big, and I know he's lost some weight this year, but they're expecting a lot out of him. To have a guy like that replace Josh Oduro, you're asking a lot. Bensley Joseph, the transfer guard from Miami, who I know St. John's flirted with, what can he do? But you're not just going to replace Devin Carter in his impact, because Devin Carter wasn't just a scorer. He was the heart and soul of that team. In my opinion, was the best player in the Big East last year. So these are just so many questions for a Providence team. Now, I have them finishing sixth. Would I be surprised if they finished higher than that? They finished fifth, fourth, third? No. But I think it's asking a lot. So PCBC, come on at me, Frank. You gotta have to tell your friends to take it easy on me. That's where we are going to wrap. Pat Kane, Cole Latshaw from the Red Storm Rapid Reaction podcast. Thank you so much for joining Frank and myself.
Pleasure as always, gentlemen.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Dave. Thanks for having us, Frank.
Absolutely. Guys, make sure you are tuned in to the Red Storm Rapid Reaction podcast, the YouTube channel, all of that good stuff. An absolute must watch. Few announcements before I get out of here. Johnny fans, please make sure you are at Stout on November 8th from 6:30 to 8:30 for the Red Storm Rumble, a big night of St. John's trivia. It is the ultimate St. John's basketball experience. Get your friends together and form a trivia team. $50 per person to enter, $300 for a team. Win great prizes like St. John's Big East tickets, high-end gift baskets, and much more. Prove that you are the smartest St. John's fan. That's at Stout on November 8th for the Red Storm Rumble. Also, The third annual Homecoming 3-on-3 basketball tournament is right around the corner, Saturday, November 2nd at 1 p.m. at Taftner Fieldhouse. That's on campus. This is a great event put on by friend of the podcast, Cesar Pozo. Teams are made randomly. You are guaranteed to play at least 3 games. First, second, and third place trophies. Plus, the Mark Jackson MVP trophy will be awarded. A 3-point shootout with cash prizes. Food and drinks will be provided. Some players from the team will be there for the opening ceremonies, and they will also be giving out the second ever Balanced Leadership Scholarship to a lucky St. John student. If you are interested in playing, please email C. Pozo Jr., that's Pozo Jr., at gmail.com for more details. And finally, as always, I appreciate all of you guys tuning in as we are now officially into season 3 of this podcast. Taking a quick second for a special shout out to one listener who tunes into every episode, my little dude, Lorenzo. Thank you so much for always tuning in with your dad, and I appreciate your support. Let's go, St. John's. Johnny Nation, once again, thank you to Pat Kane, Cole Latshaw of the Red Storm Rapid Reaction Podcast, Frank Molfetta. You will be catching him in a pool in Bahamas soon enough, but you know what? You're going to catch him screaming his head off at a Johnny game sooner than that. Johnny's basketball starts November 4th, and we will catch you next time.